Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for coming onto the Reframing Chronic Illness podcast. I have actually just finished one of your yoga flows in your Root and Rise program, so I'm feeling good. Thank you for that.
Good. Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for joining me. I hope I taught well.
Oh, you did. It was beautiful, as always.
Oh, bless you.
So yeah, and it was nice as we didn't have our swim this morning, so it was nice to connect with you in that way. Different to usual.
Definitely. Yeah. So we didn't go swimming because I was listening to my body this morning. Usually every Thursday we've got a nice routine of kind of getting up early, getting in the lake. But I just thought this morning my period pains were really bad. They're really strong. And my whole body this week has just been saying, no, you're tired, take a rest. And I did rest, I did sleep in. But then I must say, I actually did go for a little run. But yeah, I think it was just much more what my body wanted today. So thank you for your understanding there.
Celebration of listening to your body.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
So, Lucy, I would love to talk to you today about, I think one of the things when we first met, one of the things I really loved about your classes, and we did meet for the first time in one of your classes, was something you say at the beginning and the end, usually I think, of every class, and that is, you have nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, and nothing else to be. I think I've got that right.
Nearly, yeah. It's no one else to be at the end. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I love that, and I think something that we've talked about is presence and connection. And when you're living with a chronic illness, I think presence and being present in kind of this moment can be really difficult, because you kind of want to get away from it. And actually something we've also talked about is sitting with pain and discomfort and the things we can learn from that. So I'd just love for you to talk about that, really.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's a big one to start with. Yeah. So the reason I like that phrase and the reason I include it in every single class I teach is that so many of us, I would almost go as far to say all of us, live these lives where we are on the move and we're, always worrying about other people, worrying about what we're doing with work. We're here, there, and everywhere. Even during COVID, yes, we were in our own little bubbles, we were in our own four walls, but there was still this kind of need to expand and to go out and to push and grow. And the reason that I like to use that phrase is just to remind people to come as they are, and whatever they're coming with, that is more than okay. Because every message that we receive in life, marketing message, it's all about how we're not enough, and how if we had this cream, this would make us more smooth, or if we use this mascara, we'd look more beautiful, or if we had this procedure, then it would solve this problem. And there's never any messages of, you are more than enough exactly as you are in this moment. And I think kind of using that phrase at the beginning of a class for me, and just reminding yourself of it whenever it pops into your mind, it can be so powerful for just going, you know what, actually right here, whatever I'm going through, whatever I'm feeling, however I look right now, that's okay. That's, I don't need to pretend. I don't need to play a role. I don't need to wear a mask. I'm actually okay. So that's kind of what I love about, firstly, the wording there. And then also I find the more repetition with things like that, the more that we do start to actually believe it, and it's not going to be that we believe it all the time, but it's the more, the more that we repeat something, the more that someone repeats something to us, the more, I suppose, automatic it becomes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Would you say that there's a big kind of message of acceptance in there? It sounded like acceptance is just something that, again, going back to these marketing messages and these things that are being sold to us, and these ideas that are being sold to us, it's actually all coming from this place of of non-acceptance.
No, definitely. I think it's I mean, that, not just that phrase, but also my whole kind of experience that I've had with yoga, and the teachers that I've had have definitely helped me to see this kind of to feel acceptance of myself. I'm not saying 100% all the time, because there are definitely times when I want to change this, and if I were to just eat a bit less and then I'd be a bit skinnier, then of course I have those thoughts that everyone else has. But it's kind of it's taught me that the other phrase is, everything I need I already have.
I
So
love that one.
yeah, everything I need I already have. And it's kind of I mean, I suppose it's the opposite almost of a lot of the messaging out there, more actually in the wellness space at the moment. And that is all about expansion and growing out, and how much more money can you make, and how much more can you do and produce. And actually, for me, I was living in that mindset for such a long time. How many more Instagram followers can I get? And how many more classes a week can I teach? And it was that more that really, I think, made me quite unhappy, actually, even though I was doing something I loved for a living. And I do love teaching yoga. I love sharing the practice, but I was still really unhappy. And I think it was that I hadn't got to that place of fully accepting where I am in each and every moment. And so actually, once I realized that that's where it's coming from, that helped me to come much more to that place, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard though.
Oh my God, it's so hard. It's so hard. And I actually love what you just said about accepting where I am in each and every moment. And actually, acceptance isn't something that you can do and tick off. It's this like evolving, ever changing landscape. And that's it's actually just come to me. But it's something that, to acknowledge that, and having that grounding, I think, in being able to remind yourself. And you say with these phrases, reminding yourself of them every day, having that grounding and kind of knowing where to go with something, with the acceptance, with being present, knowing kind of how to navigate that.
Or knowing that you don't have to go anywhere.
Or knowing that you don't have to go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Sometimes you'll find exactly where you are. It's it's almost getting behind the why as well. Why do I feel like I need to put that if caveat in? Why, if I'm going to get that? Because we all know, we've all been through those experiences. I mean, for me, sometimes my guilty pleasure is purchasing things that I probably don't need to be purchasing. And I know when I'm about to purchase that thing, that when it arrives, it's not really going to make me that happy. But I've still got this, but if it does, when it comes, then my wardrobe will be complete and I'll never need anything ever again.
Yeah.
But actually it's kind of, I'm not explaining it very well, but you know what I mean. It's like, if we accept that everything we have we already need, and take the if and the buts and the whens out of it, then again, it's a practice. I think maybe that's the word you were looking for as well. It's a practice. It's never it's never a destination that we ever fully arrive at, but it's just a practice of putting these phrases and these these things in place kind of day to day. So
totally. And I totally resonate with the kind of the then that will be complete idea. It's just it's not really acknowledging that just it is ever changing. Our lives, our bodies, our health, the landscape, the world is just ever changing. And we can, again, if I have that, I will be happy. It's that kind of like that idea of this far-reaching happiness that we'll never get.
And asking the why do I think I would be happy if and when I were to get there, and why can't I be happy right now? Why can't I accept where I am right now? It's that's kind of, I think, really the question that we should be asking ourselves in those moments.
That's a touching question, actually, because as you were saying that, I kind of imagined myself in the days when I was really, really struggling with my health, and why can't I be happy? And my answer would have been, I'm in pain, and
Mm,
I don't, in fact, I really hated what I saw when I looked in the mirror, because my chronic illness is visible, and it's my skin. So,
mm,
and I hated what was happening to my body, and how can I be happy when all of that is true?
mm,
um and that required, really, I think, sitting with it,
mm.
and just having faith, I think, that there was something perhaps bigger at play. I can't even remember, really. um what do you think about, kind of, if you, even if you ask yourself, why do I believe this thing will make me happy, or given a circumstance? And I know mental health is something that
Mm,
are continuously working with, and
mhm,
it's when you're having these really, I suppose, negative feelings about your current situation,
mm.
how does that play out?
So for me, when I start to feel or think and in a what we would say as a negative way, I mean, if you know me, I try not to
Yeah.
use kind of
No.
positive and negative too much, but
Yeah.
let's use it because everyone will know what we mean. So when those negative thoughts start to come in, it either goes one of two ways for me. So let's say I haven't acknowledged the negative thoughts, so they start to come in. If I go down that route and it starts to snowball, because that is really what happens is, if you don't nip it in the bud, it's just one negative thought after another. So, oh, I don't like that, how my tummy looks in the mirror. Oh my god, I'm so fat. Oh my god, my arms are so fat too. Like I'm not good enough. I should do more exercise. I should eat less calories. Well, why can I not eat less calories? Why? It starts to
Mm.
snowball. Whereas if I catch it and I go the other way, the negative thought will come and I go, okay, I can
Mhm.
see what's about to happen here. I can either let myself go down that route that we just explored, or I can go, well, yeah, okay, my tummy might look a little bit big in inverted commas today, but you know what? I really enjoyed that meal last night. It
Yeah.
was delicious, and my body is amazing because it allows me to enjoy all this delicious food. And I ate that food so that I have the energy to do the activities that I love, like wild swimming with my friend, or like going on a run, or walking my dog. So it's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of, for me, that's how it can manifest. It can go either one of two ways. But taking the second route, it definitely, again, coming back to that word practice, it's taken a lot of practice, and I can't say I always choose that route. Sometimes I still go the first route, and yeah, it's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that does answer my question. Also, it highlights this idea of the reasons I think that we become unhappy with certain parts of ourselves, whether that
Mm,
be the way our tummy looks, whether that be the way our skin looks, whether that be
mm,
um, the way we feel that day. And
mm,
is it because this picture of what a human being in society is here to do, that's
mm,
painted to us? We're here to serve, we're here to please, we're here to um, be cogs in a huge wheel, and when the and as kind of little pieces of that, we're here to do that in a way that where we look like people that I would have said on a magazine, but people we see on Instagram these days, or the way that
mm,
filters make people look on Instagram these days, or whatever. And and actually we forget. I love what you said about, hey, no, me being me right now is allowing me to do all of these things I absolutely love doing.
mm,
And when I was very poorly, I was underweight, and
mm,
I was underweight for a long, long time. And actually, I didn't realize it so much, but my family did. And they'd say to me, you know, you know, in a concerned way, you're looking quite underweight, and I'd be thinking, hey, this is the bonus of my chronic illness, like this is great. But actually, as my skin has become so much better, and as the reason I was underweight, it wasn't anything to do with the amount of eating I did. I eat a lot of food, always have done. My body was using so many calories to, because my skin barrier was just completely broken from head to toe. I just wasn't eating the right amount of calories. And actually, I didn't know that really. I didn't recognize that I needed to be eating a significant amount of calories. Anyway, as my skin's become a lot better, I've put on weight, and that's been really tricky for me to navigate, because my weight wasn't really a consideration in my head before, but now I'm starting to kind of think things about myself, and that actually remind me of when I was 14, and I was going through puberty, and I went through puberty quite late, and I was going through puberty, and I was comparing myself to the ideals, and quote unquote, and but actually, me being the weight I am now not only means that I'm healthy, and not only means that my skin, it's a bit of a they feed into one another. My skin is good, but I'm also able to do so much of the things that bring me so much joy in life, and my body is carrying me through that, and it's this kind of thing of being able to thank ourselves for the things that society says are wrong. It's and being able to understand the bigger picture of what's going on, and is the way we're feeling getting us to look at something, even though society says we shouldn't feel like this, and it's not nice feeling down or low. I get that, but is it getting us to look, or be able to sit with ourselves, or be able to take us on a journey of acceptance?
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for sharing that, first of all, because it's
a bit long there.
No, not at all, but it's so sad, and I'm realizing this kind of more and more, and I'm not an expert in the field of weight loss or anti-diet or anything. I'm not an expert in that area at all. However, what I have realized as a woman, and it's very much the same as you, is that you get complimented more when you are smaller. People give you more compliments, say you look amazing when you are smaller. And and then when you're bigger, people, they might not say anything, especially if you have nice friends who wouldn't kind of make, but we've been programmed to think that bigger is not better, bigger is less healthy. And actually, I was listening to a podcast about it just today, actually, and really, really interesting. I always get her name wrong, but it's Jamila Jamil, one of her podcasts, and on the I Weigh podcast, and then an actual NHS doctor. It was a slightly older episode from August. I can send you the link, and it's just absolutely fascinating, because what this doctor was saying was actually in the ICU, the patients who are slightly overweight might actually have more chance of surviving, because as you were saying, when your body is healing and trying to recover from something, just like with your skin, it needs that extra energy, so it kind of it will use up the supplies. It's not to be an advocate for being seriously overweight, but actually kind of healthy weight for most of us is not super skinny and a really low body percentage fat. It's actually kind of and we need to kind of step away from this idea of weight and how we look, because it should be much more about how we feel, like the vitality that we feel. And by the sounds of things, that's exactly what you've got back, is your vitality. And that's what we should celebrate, is feeling well, being able to go out and enjoy the things that we like doing, having good cognitive function, our brains as well. all of these things, that those are signs of health and vitality. And I just And as I say, again, I'm no doctor, I'm no scientist, I'm not an expert on that conversation, but I know that when I haven't eaten or eaten very well, my brain just doesn't work. I feel rubbish. And actually, it does affect my mental state too, in terms of those negative thoughts start to come in. And I'm going to be much more likely to, again, go down that route of negative thinking. My mental health is much more affected when I am, when I'm trying to lose weight. I must say I've been quite, I think lucky is the word, that my mum tried a few diets growing up, but she was never super restrictive in her eating at all. She would do, I don't think there's anything such as like a healthy diet, so to speak, but we were always encouraged to eat quite healthily and like a range of foods and everything. So I think I'm quite lucky that I've never been too drawn to, the restrictive eating on an extreme scale. I've of course, as most girls have tried to restrict calories a few times. I've tried that, but I think I've realized quite quickly that as I say, when I do that, I just don't feel good, and I can't do the activities that I enjoy. And I love to be active, as you know me. I love to be active, and I need to feel like I'm at least I can take the dog for a walk, or just get outside once a day. So anyway, big ramble there on something I'm totally not qualified to speak about, but just difference for my thoughts.
No, but it's your experience, and you're totally qualified in speaking about your experience. It's this. Sometimes I think we have a fear of saying things that aren't scientifically correct, or go against the general kind of train of thought. But actually, your experience matters, and to be able to actually connect to that and speak to that is so important to our well-being, really. So thank you. As we have touched on, thought patterns and mental health, depression and anxiety are things that you live with. And it was interesting that I asked if you live with a chronic illness, and you said no, but some people, I suppose, would see depression and anxiety as chronic because they're with you, unless it's situational. Of course, there is a difference, but and it would be classed as a mental illness in kind of more medical terms, I suppose. How has your journey with that changed? I know yoga has been such a big part of that for you, and also your movement. You talked about that, and getting outside with your dog Elsie, and moving every day. I know that plays a huge part. I'd love for you to speak a bit more about your journey with that.
Yeah, so taking a few steps back, for me, I think my mental health challenges began actually when I was going through puberty. So for me, it began actually when my hormones changed at around the age of 13. And I would say at that age, it was the depression that flared up the most rather than anxiety. As I've got older, that's actually probably flipped, I would say. As I've got older, it's more anxiety and less depression, I think. And I don't know if that's hormonal, I'm not sure. But my personal experience is I would go through really, really dark patches for my depression when I was younger. And linked to that was also quite a long period of self-harm as well. So between the ages of 13 and 19, 20, I would also self-harm using razor blades. So trigger warning on the episode for anyone that's listening there. So yeah, using razor blades. And my intention with that at the time was never, I don't think, to end things completely, but it was actually just to cry for help. And I think for me that was how it manifested, and I just really felt so helpless, and I just had no idea how to change that, those thought patterns. And that got discovered by my parents. So I think when I was up 15, they found the marks, and then I did go to cognitive behavioral therapy at that time. So again, full disclaimer, I got help, and it was private, it was paid for, so I know that's not available to everybody, but I was very lucky that for me that was available. And I think the cognitive behavioral therapy did help me to begin my journey towards changing my thought patterns, and kind of, as I spoke about, nipping them in the bud and trying to change them when I noticed that. But then, unfortunately for me, as you know, when I was 18, I then got into a very emotionally abusive relationship as well. So I think that kind of, although I was kind of starting to grow my toolkit, so to speak, that to help me navigate the anxiety and depression, that added another layer of stuff to work through. I say another layer, probably another few layers, if I'm honest. There was a lot, because it was a very I think the term that I've learned recently is coercive control. There was a lot of that in my relationship. So because of that, my thought patterns were hugely influenced by him and what he was telling me, and how, seeing myself through his reflection of what he was telling me I was, rather than how I actually felt about myself. And so, of course, it was very interesting though, actually, during that time, I would say that my anxiety and depression actually wasn't as prevalent. And I think it was because I almost became emotionally numb during that period of my life, just to shut down and deal with what was going on. It was like the only way that I could deal with it. And then I found yoga around maybe like 3 years into that situation. So it was, it must have been about 3.5 years into that situation, because I met him when I was 18, as I say, went to university with him even. And I started to do some yoga YouTube videos when I was at university. So big up the yoga videos again.
Yeah.
But it was only after uni that I then seriously started to get into yoga again. And actually what was really interesting for me, like I kind of described that period of my yoga practice is almost like peeling back the layers, and it was kind of like I was shedding those things that he was kind of putting in my brain, and slowly I started to kind of see what was true for me and what had been enforced and imprinted upon me by this other person. But still though, I think emotionally I was still quite shut down. I was still quite kind of, I suppressed it, because I think it was like a survival thing. It was like, I need to get through this, I need to survive this, and then when I'm out the other side, that was a different story. But so I did come out the other side. It was 5.5 years in the end that I was in that situation, but I came out the other side when I was 23, I think. And actually, quite interestingly, initially, again, I got more therapy when I first came out. So again, that was another tool. And there were a lot of tears and stuff, but it was more kind of, I think, just for me to verbally get everything out first of all, just to be like, this is what happened. I need to tell someone. I need to like be told that it wasn't my fault, because I think I did know that deep down, but I think I just needed that extra validation. But it's been really interesting because coming out the other side of that, I couldn't put a timeline on it. I'm now 31. So as I came out of that when I was 23, now 31, I would say the last few years, actually, the anxiety especially has started to flare up again. And I feel like maybe that's because once I knew I was emotionally kind of safe, and I could start to feel again, and that's when actually it started to manifest itself a little bit more. And so even though I found yoga and that really helped me get out of that situation, it's kind of been again, it's a practice. It's been an ongoing tool that I've had to use to navigate now this new wave of whatever's coming up. I say new wave, but it's been over the last few years, and I'm definitely not there wherever there might be. But I'm slowly kind of I think I'm slowly beginning to realize how I can really use the tools that yoga has given me to now be an emotional being as well, an emotionally like alive being that's in touch with my emotions, that's, you know, and as I say, it's a real journey, and I will never be there, but I'm getting there, I suppose. I don't know.
Yeah.
does that all again, now that was my turn to word vomit on you, but
Oh.
yeah.
Story of our relationship. No.
Yeah.
Oh no, Lucy, thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that. That's you know, I really appreciate your vulnerability there, and thank you. I that shutting down is so interesting, and I sometimes think, well, it's such a protective mechanism that our bodies sometimes take over, and I think, you know, especially when we're going through a really traumatic experience, our bodies can take over and protect us that way, and often it's the aftermath of that, the fallout of that, that is almost as tough. You know, it's
Yeah.
trying to process all of that, but you need strength to be able to do that, right? And yeah, talking to that shutting down, and asking, I suppose, you as a yoga teacher, me as a coach, we're sometimes asking people, I think, in asking people to connect with themselves, I think that's asking people to come out of that shutdown mode. And perhaps, you know, that might be how, you know, what yoga, I'm not putting words into your mouth here, but what yoga did for you when, and helped you out of that. And I was so pleased to hear that you had other tools to kind of help you through that.
Yeah, definitely. And I must just kind of say at this point as well, for me, when I talk about yoga, and I know you know this, but just to make it clear for anyone listening, it isn't just the movement of yoga, and it's, you know, and I really do want to make that clear, because for some people the movement is great and that's as far as they're going to take yoga, and that's absolutely fine. If that's what you want to use that for, then brilliant. But for me, it is the whole thing. I don't try to use the word holistically too much, but it's the holistic approach to it. It's the mind, it's the body, it's how I actually show up in the world around me as well. It's kind of, you know, it's all of those things. And yes, I had the cognitive behavioral therapy, yes, I had talking therapies, but actually a lot of my meditation teachers have really helped me to learn techniques as well, you know, mindful techniques as well, about observing thoughts and seeing them come in, and actually trying not to judge that thought as a good or a bad thought, which is why I said earlier that, you know, I don't do positives or negatives really, because actually each thought, it just is what it is, and it's a piece of information. It's come up from somewhere, it's come up for a reason. It might lead to another thought, it might lead to actually an emotion building within us, and it's very, very interesting when you can start to kind of use those tools that yoga can offer us, because it really helps you to see that, I know this is so classic and cheesy, but you're not your mind. You are not your mind, and you are not your thoughts. Yes, you experience them, so don't negate that. You know, it's very much part of the human experience. But just because you experience something, like you're going to experience getting rained on a rainy day, and you're going to feel that, and it's going to make you really wet and really cold, and you're going to wish you had your umbrella with you. But it's, you know, so it doesn't make it any less. It's just, it is not attached to you. And I actually find it very interesting, actually, then when I start to observe thoughts, I do start to go, well, where is that coming from then? I wonder why that's coming up today. Oh, okay, yeah, maybe it is that time in my cycle, my hormones are kind of, you know, making my thoughts, you know, more prone to be and so it's kind of, so for me, that's what I just need to make that clear, that that's what yoga is, as you know, as well as the physical side of it. And then also for me, a huge part, especially this year, has been reminding myself that actually going out into the world is so important as well. And as I say, it's about how you show up, it's about how you interact with other people, it's about what you're giving, what you're sharing. And it's, but we can only do that part if we do take care of ourselves as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I love your perspective on yoga, and I know that's been changing, that is changing a lot at the moment, and seeing, I think, you define it for yourself is really special. And if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it as short as I can, because I don't want to go on a massive rant and put people off. But yes, so I think for me, so my first yoga teacher training was in India. And I'm really grateful for that, because obviously yoga was born in India and it was a really special place to do my training. But what I have been learning over the last 18 months now, as a consequence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and then that kind of developed into being more aware of colonization as well. I needed to take that conversation and look at it in relation to yoga and India. And to be quite honest, what you find when you start to dig into that is really quite shocking. So the British Raj ruled in India for, I think it was about 400 years. Now, again, I'm not an expert in history, but this is roughly what I've learned. So please don't quote me word for word, but this is just a rough kind of finding of what came through for me. So yes, the British Raj ruled in India for about 400 years. And during that time, they basically championed only one form of yoga, and that was the yoga of the Hindu nationalists. Now, if you know anything about India, it is a huge country. There are 1 billion people in there. Obviously, in that colonization period, there wouldn't have been quite as many, the population wouldn't have been as much, but it's still very vast. There would have been hundreds, if not thousands, of different yoga styles and different thought schools. That's what I'm trying to go the word I was trying to find. But anyway, all of that was stamped out, other than the yoga of the British Raj. And the reason for that was that basically Hinduism was seen as the least threatening to Christianity. It was kind of the most similar. Yes, they have thousands of gods, if not millions, actually, maybe in Hinduism. But it was basically the least threatening, because they have their main gods, and they tried to find similarities between Jesus and Vishnu and things like that. And so it was kind of, and so this one style survived. And not only that, but when it then came over to the West, it was kind of just morphed and transformed into this thing that suited us. It suited the Western palate. And so there's a whole conversation there about cultural appropriation and all of that. And again, I won't go too much into that today, but it made me really think about kind of, was it okay that I was still practicing and teaching yoga? And what could I do to firstly honor that history, but also to make sure that I wasn't just teaching something that wasn't my own. And yes, I still do use a couple of Sanskrit words in my classes, but I make sure that they're words that I have the full understanding of. So for example, a word that I've taken out of my classes is namaste, because people use it as a closing namaste, when actually it's it has hundreds of different iterations, variations in India, and the namaste one is just, again, one of many, and it's the diluted one. It's kind of and it's not a closing, it's actually very often more of a greeting and acknowledgement, and it's often used between someone who, this is my understanding, so it might be slightly wrong, but to someone who is deeply spiritual and deeply religious. So just
Okay.
saying it at the end of a class, like namaste, it's kind of like no one questioned, well, why are we saying this namaste? Because it makes us sound more cool, like
Right.
yogis. And it's
Yep.
whereas a phrase I have kept in my classes is Om Shanti. And
Mm.
that means, peace to all, peace to everyone. And for me, like, I understand that, I have that understanding, and that really means a lot to me. And that's genuinely what I want, is peace to all beings.
Yeah.
And that's how I live my life. And so I feel comfortable with saying that, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm still kind of exploring that relationship. And so, leading more into your question, the part of my practice that I have kind of questioned a little bit more is the more esoteric stuff that I never personally experienced myself. So in my classes now, I speak much less about things like chakras, and I use the word energy, but not in the same way that I used to use it. It used to
Okay.
be kind of quite a mythical thing, and it's kind of, now it's more, I would say, feel the energy in your right hip as you come out of a
Yes.
pose. And that's
Yeah.
that's to draw attention to a physical sensation that's going on. The blood's coming back into that part of your body. And, rather than like, I don't know, let's capture the energy around us and use that and that kind of. So I speak about it more in like a tangible sense now, because I actually understand that I have an experience of that. Whereas with the chakras, to be quite honest, I never had experience of seeing the spinning centers in my, for people that don't know what chakras, it's meant to be like an energy center. And this was the other thing as well. We only had one system of chakras that we know about in the West, and actually, again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of them. So I just wasn't feeling comfortable anymore with this cherry picking of stuff that just kind of, I was told, was part of yoga, but it was part of a very diluted, westernized yoga. And I know kind of how I'm describing it now is making it seem like I've diluted it even more. But I think what I've done is I've stripped it back and simplified it to be true to what I actually experience myself.
Yes. Yeah.
And to what I understand myself. And I think that for me feels a lot more honest at this moment in time. But I'm sure if you were to ask me in 6 months' time, maybe I will have changed again. But
and that's okay. That's growth. That's fine.
Yeah. Who knows? But yeah.
Oh, that, listening to you talk about that, I couldn't help but think about context and this isolation and this system. And I think this translates to all of life, or at least all of life today, but especially something that I'm working a lot with at the moment with chronic illness is the fact that we look at chronic illness in isolation. We take it completely out of context, and therefore the kind of way we can go about healing or living can be actually quite performative. And as with yoga, again, this performative, this kind of, am I doing something that I've always loved about your teaching is it's not how this pose looks, it's how it feels to you. And is it feeling like this? Because if it is, that's great. Is it feeling like this? And if it isn't, okay, maybe you need to do a bit of adjustment there. Maybe, you need to move into something that's a bit less traditional, like, and I think it's, we need to be looking at, and you said earlier about using the word holistic. Again, this word holistic has been quite bastardized, really. It's kind of, again, a tick box, kind of a performative thing. And yoga isn't just what happens on the mat, as you have been talking about. Chronic illness isn't just about the way it manifests physically or mentally. It's about the whole picture. And I think if we're going to kind of work through these things in a way that is really effective in our lives, effective perhaps not the right word, but really makes a difference, it's really meaningful, we need to be bringing in all of these different elements. We need to be bringing in the history, we need to be bringing in the consequences, and looking at all of that, and the parallels between that and what you've just talked about is, it's so, I just really enjoyed listening to you talk about it. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I think it's so interesting because both of the worlds that we're in, there's definitely a lot of overlap, but it's like it all comes back to white supremacy and the patriarchy. It's those two, it all comes back to that. It's everything that we were speaking about earlier in terms of, you know, feeling like we're fat because, you know, we don't look the same as when we were a teenager or whatever. And it was all just forms of control that were, you know, put in to make women feel smaller, or, you know, like with yoga, it was just a form of the colonizers to control, you know, I don't know what even the right terminology is, but to control the Indian population. Like they were telling them what they could and couldn't do, and it's going to be, I think these conversations are happening more and more frequently. It's, you know, and a lot of people are understanding that when we talk about white supremacy and the patriarchy, we're not saying that every white person is bad. We're not saying that every man is bad. It's not like that at all. I think more people are beginning to understand that actually we're talking about systems that are in place. Yeah. And it's kind of, you know, and that's no one person's fault. But if we're going to rebalance these systems and make them more fair and more just for everybody, then actually we do all need to take an individual role within that system, within that realigning, sorry. So yeah, so I hope more people are realizing that, and I do feel like they are. So you're always going to get a few people who are like, well, I'm a white man and I'm not a bad person, so F you, and I'm really angry now because you've pissed me off. There's always going to be a few people like that, but it's, you know, it's for me, that description that I've just described and changing my relationship with my yoga practice and therefore with my yoga teaching is the small little thing that I've started to try and kind of do to readjust, I suppose, the balance a little bit. And if we all did our little thing and looked at our biases, and, you know, none of us are going to be perfect. We're all going to have some kind of bias. And actually, being really honest, just today, I've been thinking about how actually, you know, some of my thought processes are probably quite fat phobic, and that's something that I need to look at. It was because of this podcast again that I was listening to, and it's something that I need to look at in myself, because that's the conditioning. It's not my fault that's kind of the thoughts, you know, because there was a time not so long ago when I did think, well, if someone is, you know, really overweight, and then it's their own fault because they have eaten too much and they've not moved enough. And I've understood over the last few months that no, Lucy, it's not that simplistic at all. You know, there's a lot more nuance to that conversation. So it's kind of, we all have to play our role in looking at our own biases and how we can begin to dismantle them, because only when we do are those two, you know, power structures going to start to crumble. Watch them burn.
And on that note, no, I'm with you. And I think, you know, and going back to kind of, it's not your fault you're having those, you know, those thoughts. It is conditioning, but it is, you know, our responsibility to work on those, to notice those, to not feel really offended that we've realized that we're having those thoughts, if you know what I mean. Not take that kind of I think I'm trying to say, not take offense to ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yourself.
Yeah.
But maybe not to go down that negative thought pattern, like, oh my God, I'm such a bad person for thinking that. How could I have thought that for so long? It's again like nipping that in the bud and going, okay, no, I acknowledge that it's coming from that. That's the source of it. And it's not necessarily because of me that I'm at this point, but now it's down to me where I go forwards from here and how I change my thinking from here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a big compassion piece in there, I think, as well. That's um going to be a topic for another day, probably, because
Yes.
we could talk forever. We could talk forever. um but I think we've covered such a great range of topics today, and thank you so much for giving your time and coming on here and just having a chat with me, because I love having a chat with you.
Same. I love it.
Oh,
I hope I haven't come across really angry and
absolutely not to me, not to me. I know you're not that kind. I know you're not an angry person,
Yeah.
but where can people find you, Lucy?
So the best place, probably, I want to say Instagram because I'm using it again now. But actually, the other thing that Alana knows I've done this year is taken 8 months off Instagram for my mental health, and it actually worked wonders. But I am back on it now. So Instagram for now. I don't know how long I'm going to stick around on there, but my handle is Lucy Victoria Jackson Yoga. Very catchy. But my website is always a fail-safe. There's a contact form on there, so you can always go to my website and find a contact form there, and also all the information about my classes that I run, because I do online classes still. I do in-person classes around the Berkshire area in Ascot or Windsor if anyone's around. So that's just www.lucyvictoriajackson.com.
Amazing. And from your website, they can find your Facebook also, can't they? And do you have a
Yes,
newsletter?
I
forget.
do have a newsletter. Yes, it's not as good as yours, anywhere near as good as yours, but I I use it more to update for kind of events and things that are coming up, rather than more of like a journal thing. So yeah.
Amazing. And I will say, keep an eye out for any retreats you might have going on next year, if they're in the pipeline.
Yes.
They're special.
Yeah,
They are special.
definitely.
So, yeah. Oh, thank you so much again, Lucy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, lovely. Bye.
Bye.